can't replace part of the brain. Like you
treat them the same.
A source of truth for the medtech industry.
Coexists with the products.
Robot understands things automatically.
Number one show in the medtech industry.
So Stryker got ahead of that and changed in the 90s, built $1 billion company that held up high. A lot of things.
State of medtech with your host, Omar and Khateeb.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the show. I'm really excited for today's guest, mainly because in my 10 plus years in the industry, not that long, but long enough that I get around the block a few times, there are a few names that I often hear. Fred Mull is one of them, Maurice Ferre, and there's another one called Chris Dewey. Chris Dewey is an investor, somebody who's been involved in a variety of different companies in our industry. Many of you may have known him from Mako. His reach and influence spans across the industry, across a lot of great companies. And I saw a post recently on LinkedIn with Potrero announcing that Chris was joining their board, and I was really excited about it. Potrero's former company of mine, now called Acuren Medical. And so I said, let me reach out to Chris and see, maybe I can get him on the show. I sent him a message, and the next thing I know, he's calling me, and we spent about an hour on the phone just having a blast. And so I couldn't be more excited to have him on the show to share his story, but talk about his take on the medtech marketplace, his vision for the industry, and probably share some more stories along the way. Chris, thanks so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
Great, Omar. Thanks so much for having me. It's a fun thing to do. When I got the email from you, said, man, I want to talk to this guy. So here I am.
Hey, and I really appreciate it because, look, you're a busy guy. You can be doing a lot of things right now, and you're hanging out with us. So we really appreciate it. And you're down in sunny Miami right now, correct?
Down here this is the home base of Mako, and we've got a bunch of other startups we've had down here. There's a pretty cool little community down here of medtech startups. So love being here.
It's pretty impressive. It's pretty impressive. So Chris, why don't we start from the very beginning, which is like, who is Chris Dewey? Where did you grow up? What'd you do in school? And like, how the heck I don't think anybody starts out by saying, I'm going to go into medtech. Like, how did you end up in the space? So where'd you grow up?
I grew up in New Jersey on a farm. And that's interesting because people that grow up on farms are bigger risk takers, a fact. Then I went to school in New York City for 6th, 7th, 8th grades and ended up in high school in Connecticut. And it turns out that I was dyslexic, but they didn't do that. They didn't understand that back in those days. So school was of a struggle. And I went to Columbia. I went to Rutgers and then ended up at Columbia. It's a long story. Bottom line is, I had a rough time in college and found other things to do. And one of the things I did was I ended up in Freeport, Texas, and built a 110-foot steel shrimp boat. So I'm 19 years old with a Cajun partner who was 27, and we built this shrimp boat. And it's a long story how I got there, but I learned a lot by doing that. And basically what I learned is you can do anything in life. And after that, I don't want to make the story too long, but after that, I went back to New York City and got myself in the movie business. And how to get myself in the movie business, that's also a super long story. But my stepfather had been in films, and behind me there are pictures of Winston Churchill. And in 1960, he did a 13-show series on Winston Churchill, which started my interest in love of Winston Churchill. And so I knew something about the movie business. But we started in 1966, a partner of mine from Columbia University started a company called Canon Films. And by 1970, and the jet fuel of the film industry is cash. You need the cash money to make films. And it turns out that I was really good at raising money. Now, in those days, the movies one of our first movies was The Wicked Die Slow. It was a color cinemascope Western, $20,000. So it's not like you're asking people for a lot of money, 500s and thousands at a time. And so that was we were successful. By 1970, we had the biggest picture of the summer, took the company public in 1972. And so at 26, I was president of a film company on the NASDAQ. And how did I get to Medtech? And in 1980, and the Canon film story is a phenomenally good story. Our company ended up by buying MGM through a guy named Giancarlo Peretti, which is there are stories along the way here. And you asked me earlier about I was on the Dick Cavett show. So I had my 15 minutes of fame back in the movie business days. But from there, I went to Wall Street. I was at a firm called Bear Stearns, super successful firm until it wasn't. And I ended my career at a firm called Jeffries. And while at Jeffries, I started a fund called Robotic Ventures One. And our advisor was a fellow named Rod Brooks, who was head of artificial intelligence at MIT at the time. And went to see Rod Brooks, and he said that the whole world of robotics was changing. Now, this is 20 years ago. He said that at that point, it was manufacturing, it was painting, welding, picking, and moving. It was all industrial. He said there's a whole new world coming. And what is it, I say? He said, one example was medical robotics. And so I went down to Florida and met a fellow named Roni Abovitz. And Roni Abovitz is a terrific guy. And he showed me what the Barrett arm could do. And it instantly, I saw, I don't know, it's funny in my life. I just saw where that could go with this robotic arm to be able to replicate a surgeon's hands as a tool. And I invested in that. And then that started a whole line of investing in medical. I found Maurice Ferre, who had just sold his company to GE. And Maurice came in and together we restructured the company, dropped down a subsidiary called Mako Surgical, and kind of the rest is history from there. So it's a little bit of a long story, but anyway, that's how I got into them.
No, that was great. And if anything, not long enough, I got so many questions, but like the first thing was when you were at Canon, which Canon Film went on to be a very successful company and everything, you had to have walked away with some really interesting insights. What were some insights that you felt contributed to your career moving forward in terms of the investment world? Like, what were some sort of takeaways from that time?
Thinking instantly on two. One was in raising money. Raised money. Our first success was getting our first institutional investor. It was a guy named Harold Witt, W-I-T, Harold Witt, a wonderful gentleman. He was at Allen and Company. I'm not sure if you know who Allen and Company is, but it is a super successful investment banking firm. And Harold Witt made an investment. He invested $1 million. And in talking to him, he said, Chris, he said, I don't invest in ideas. I invest in people. And that's something that I've taken away, because when I look at all of these deals that we invest in, yes, it's obviously the technology, but it's also I invest in people. So that's one takeaway. The other one is the movie business it's bringing different groups together. The director, first it starts with the story, and then the director, and then the actresses, and then the locations, and then the editing and the music and all the pieces that go together. And it's people, and people aren't difficult. And it's being able to bring this together and produce a product. And I've looked at the way I look at starting small companies. Does these small companies always go through these life cycles? And it's people. It always gets down to people. People make a difference. So I don't know if there's insights I take away from the movie producing to producing a winner in a technology company.
Of the films that you produced while at Canon, which one are you most proud of?
Our biggest success was a film called Joe. And it was in the summer of 1970. It was Susan Sarandon's first picture. It was Peter Boyle's first picture. John Avildsen, who was the director, he went on to direct the Rockies, all three Rockies. Norman Wexler, who was the writer, he did Serpico and Saturday Night Fever. It was everybody's first big success. I won't say our brilliance, but anyway, part of our success was we were in New York City, and we pulled from the New York City talent as opposed to Hollywood. We were really the first of the independent film companies. And what I mean,
and that's rare back then too, because back in the 70s, anytime you wanted to make a movie, like you just go out west to Hollywood. So I think that was also something that, our Scorsese also did as well later on in his films. Like when he did was it Scorsese who did The Godfather? No, Coppola did The Godfather. Yeah, and he was really well known for actually hiring real Italians to be in the parts. In a way, you guys did something similar earlier on, which is pulling from New York City talent. Did you get a lot of pushback from people when you did that?
No, because there was a vibrant ad industry. So advertising and actors needed obviously writers for the ad industry. And then there's Broadway theater. And then there was famous, I forget some of the names of the teachers, but there was a real talent pool in New York City that was underutilized. And they weren't unionized like California. So we can make movies for literally a fraction of the cost. And I say independent because we financed them, we produced them, and then we distributed them. So we actually sold them to the theaters ourselves. We were really the first of the real independents. Now, Weintraub and others have gone on to huge success, but somebody had to be there first. And literally, we were the first of the independent film guys.
It's fascinating. Quick sidebar. We'll get to MedTech in a second. Again, this is why I was excited, looking forward to this episode, which is we don't have to feel rushed. But I wonder what your take is with AI and generative AI coming out. ChatGPT released Sora, which makes it easier to produce like these images. And I wonder if AI is going to help give the independent film industry a second chance, because like up until recently, it's been very tough, and a lot of independent studios just can't make it because they just don't have the money to produce these films. I'm wondering what your thoughts are like when you see AI and generative AI being used in films more often.
I really haven't. I don't know how to answer that exactly because I haven't followed where it's going with AI. But think about where movies have gone. Where movies have gone, when we were making movies, we had 35 millimeter as opposed to 16 millimeters. So in some of our early, like our $20,000 movie, almost half of it was film stock and renting the cameras to do it. Now today, you can make a movie with an iPhone. And one of the innovations was you see them all over the place. You see them on the football field where you have a camera and a guy's walking and keeping the camera steady. That was a big deal back. I don't think they had even invented it when I was first in the movie business. So the cost of making movies has come down. So I haven't followed the industry but there's got to be a vibrant independent film industry out there of people. I've heard about people making $100,000 movies and basically good ones. There was a horror movie a few years ago.
Blair Witch Project?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it was on I think it was like a $20,000-$30,000 budget pretty much.
Yes, like nothing. So
yeah.
That's the beauty. So you don't have to, obviously, if you're doing these big, bust them up with cars and spectaculars, it costs a bunch of money. But I don't know. And maybe that's where AI can, with generative AI, and they can do, if you can make a cartoon now where you don't have to have people actually doing it on the computer, that would be brilliant so that anybody could do a cartoon. But I don't know whether it's gotten to that stage yet.
Just to bridge this over to MedTech, let me share with you one of my, we can call it like dreams. So I just started my business a couple of years ago. My first mission is to change how we sell and market in the industry, and in doing it a different way. That's why we have the podcast, we do video, we do social media. But there's a part of me where I want to accumulate as much revenue as possible to just do like really cool stuff. One of those things is there's like just wild sales and marketing stories from our industry. There's a book over here, a very old one called The Salesman Surgeon, about back in New York, like this guy who was a rep in the 70s was actually scrubbing in and doing the surgery. So there's all this wild stuff. I would love to commission a film, like you can maybe a Martin Scorsese cinematic type film of the sales and marketing years of, let's say, US Surgical or Intuitive Surgical, for example, like a Wolf of Wall Street take. I just feel like it would be just such a great film. People would love it. So in my future, hopefully I'll have some money and I'll come to you. I'll be like, Chris, okay, like I'm going to do a film like in the medtech industry. Help me out with this.
Everybody's got a movie in them. Everybody, buddy.
It would be wild. One last question on the movies, and we'll jump into medtech. But when it comes to like movies, what are some movies that you think of that you just absolutely love in terms of the production, the storylines, everything? What movies come to mind? Not necessarily canon, any movie.
Yeah. Bonnie and Clyde. I remember Bonnie and Clyde. I remember where I saw it. Literally, I remember the theater, and I remember watching it, and I was so blown away. I don't know if you ever watched Bonnie and Clyde, but they're at the end of the movie. Bonnie and Clyde are in. Did you see it by any chance? They're in a car, and all of a sudden they're driving, and there's a break of quail, birds break, and then all hell breaks loose, and they get shot in the car. I was like so taken with that. I stayed for this. I sat there and I watched the second show. I remember it was at the 34th Street Theater. So that's one. What else is out there? I love Forrest Gump. I thought that was absolutely hilarious.
That was a great movie. Did you relate to that just because it's the shrimp boat?
Yeah, 100%.
When you were telling the shrimp boat, I was like, Chris, were you like, was Forrest Gump based on you a little bit? Because that's amazing. You're the first person I met who started a shrimp boat.
Yeah, but there are friends of mine that call me Forrest Gump because my life is, it's just unbelievable life. Dancing to the Doors. Can you imagine dancing to the Doors live in a little club in New York City? I don't know. It's been an unbelievable life. So some people say I'm like Forrest Gump, but I love that. Those are two. There was the very first one I remember going on a Saturday morning with my stepfather, and there was a French short, and it was so shocking to me that I'm telling you right now. The story is a mother sending off her son is a deaf mute and sending him off to get bread, and he goes across a bridge, and there are these bullies on the bridge, and they throw him off the bridge, and he drowns, And then you see the mother. It was like it was like a 3-minute movie, a little short. It was like so shocking that how the power of something on a screen could affect you. And I remember I must have been maybe 12 or 13 years old when I saw that. The power in the old days, at least, the power of the screen is just not to be underestimated.
The best movies, they blur. If you're watching a film, whether in a movie screen or at home, they do a good job of blurring the line between the film that you're watching and the reality that you're watching it in, and it brings you into that film. And so I feel like the best, like right now, where I live, the TV we have, it's a big screen TV, but it's far back. And I can always tell if a film is good if I feel immersed in the film and I'm watching it just on a screen, as if like I've been brought into the film. And I don't feel like a lot of the films these days do a good job of that. I think Scorsese even criticized a lot of the Marvel movies. It's just a little bombastic and it's just like fireworks and shiny bright lights and everything, but not real any in-depth character development or plots.
I totally agree. But there's also, I haven't been to a movie in a movie theater in a really long time.
The movies aren't good, man. I feel like they've gone like way too woke. There's some kind of agenda and people just don't want to see that anymore.
Absolutely. Yes. One other movie, The Godfathers. And I remember
yes,
where he goes, the scene in the first one where he says this, I guess Sonny, to go in the bathroom, the guns and the thing, and come out to the table and start shooting. And he comes out and sits down at the table, and you say, "What the frick are you doing?" It was fantastic.
I think the Godfather movies are amazing. It's great acting. You learn a lot about life from those movies as well. In terms of, I think it was in number 2 where Michael told Fredo never take sides against the family again. Like I have, like my wife and I actually, we have rules in our house. We call them Godfather rules. So one of the Godfather rules is that in public, if there's something that we disagree about, like we can disagree and argue about it at home, but we don't argue with each other or take sides like in public, which is sometimes
not like Ben and Jenny at the block.
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly. So let's just jump forward. Like when you started Fund One, this was a little over 20 years ago. There's a lot of risk in that because it wasn't exactly apparent that was going to be a thing. What about robotics attracted you and made you say, I'm going to start a fund? Like of all the things you could have started a fund around in the medtech biotech space, why was it that?
I had a partner then. I have a partner now, Mark Goldwasser. We have a small brokerage firm called Ceros. And at that point, he said, look, there's everybody with all the investment banks are looking for an edge, looking for an area that's underbanked and underfollowed. And he had found it through this, as I said, through Rod Brooks. And when I went to see Rod Brooks, that was not the only company. The Roomba, the vacuum cleaner, we invested in that. So I'm one of the first investors in Roomba.
That worked out really well, I'm sure.
It worked out great. But the third one didn't work out. It was a robot to log wells, so for oil wells. Down at 17,000 feet, 20,000 feet, there's superheat down there. They put a logging device that has a cable. It's expensive, hard to do. And one of these companies had invented a robot to drive itself down in the pipe and do the logging of the well and then drive itself back up. That unfortunately failed. They just couldn't get over the communications and the heat to do it. But anyway, it just made sense to me, honestly, that there was this world of robotics. And we went out to Carnegie Mellon, MIT, to see what other things are going on in robotics. And now one of the things early on when we were at Carnegie Mellon was farming with John Deere and driving tractors when you're doing something boring. You're going up and down, back and forth to plow, to till the fields and so forth, make hay or whatever it is. So there's now a whole world of robotic tractors coming, but I heard that about 20 years ago. Obviously, self-driving cars, it's about sensors and robotics. But it attracted me. I don't know. It just made sense when I met this fellow of how you could take this device, this robotic arm, and use it not only for orthopedics, but for the cranial, for spine, and others. I don't know. It just made sense to me, honestly.
And so you started this fund. Around what year was this that Fund One was started?
20 years ago, 2002, something like that.
2000. Okay. So at that point, like Intuitive was already public. So that wasn't a company that you could have invested in. You were mainly looking at like early stage startups, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So at what point?
It was a tiny fund, mind you. And I did this when I was the at Jeffries, and I did this on the desk at Jeffries. I still had a full-time job.
You raised the fund outside of your job at Jeffries? Was this a separate fund?
No, they let me do it at Jeffries.
Oh, okay, got it.
I had partners, including Richie Handler, who's the chairman of Jeffries. If you want a little bit of a war story.
Absolutely.
So the mini war story is that, so I was in something called high yield bonds. I was an institutional salesman, high yield bonds. I ran the sales desk. And so I had a pretty good draw, if you will. Okay. But at that point, I was getting older, and it's a young guy's game, and everybody wanted my accounts. And I knew that the end was when the offering for me and once you start covering accounts. So what are accounts? The mutual fund industry, Fidelity, Putnam, Mass Financial, et al. You're selling bonds to them. And it was a great profit center for Jeffries at the time. They'd taken over Drexel Burnham. You remember those Mike Milken and the name Mike Milken and Drexel Burnham? Anyway, Jeffries had taken over that business. Anyway, so I invest in Zcat, and that was so it was 9/11. That's exactly the year it was. So it was the summer. It was like in the spring of 9/11, and the World Trade Centers. And so I invested in Zcat, and then the world fell apart afterwards, and it was really hard to raise money. So the war story is, I said, Roni, we've got how many people? I've told him, I didn't tell him. I told him how much money I was willing to invest every 2 weeks to pay the sales roles. Basically taking my paycheck from Jeffries and paying for 10 employees at Zcat to keep it going until we were able to raise the first institutional money from a friend of mine, John Whitman, wonderful gentleman, had a fund. It wasn't easy in the early days of Zcat, keeping it alive and raising money. And that's the case of so many of these good technologies, being able to find the capital to keep going.
Yeah, and this is something that you and I, we really connected on, which is it costs money to take a medical device to market. And again, one of my hopes is through my show is to attract more LPs and family offices and wealthy individuals who are going to allocate to different VCs, different firms to fund these projects, because that's the only way these things are going to happen. Look, if you think about surgical robotics, like to have a successful surgical robotics company, make it, like you're going to have to raise about close to $500,000. Just cost money to take these things to market and be successful.
Oh, yeah, that's probably nowhere near the amount of money, because we've had.
You think it's more now?
Oh, God, yes, 100%. I can give you multiple examples of what's going on with companies right now. But with Mako, we must have raised $50 million, something like that, before we went public. And then we raised another $100 million after we were public. That cost us $150 million to get it to. At that point, we sold it to Stryker. We finally built it to $100 million in sales, but it cost us $150 million to get to $100 million in sales at the time.
Going back real quick, so you had Zcat and iRobot, which turned to be very good material successes. How exactly did Maurice come into the picture? And take us through that, like those days, early days of meeting up with Maurice and then saying, "Hey, let's start this thing called Mako."
What happened was my first success was getting the first institutional investor in Zcat, which was my friend John Whitman.
For the audience, can you tell them what Zcat was, by the way?
Zcat was cats, and it was 4 names. And Zcat was the forerunner, was the investment vehicle, the forerunner of Mako. What happened, so Zcat was and it was Roni Abovitz was he's the A in Zcat. And they had imaging technology and patents from Philips and this robotic arm. And we went through, I think, 2 or 3 CEOs, because we also had something called the Allen patents, Dr. Allen from Nashville. And it was to allow for be able to open the brain and be able to go for deep brain stimulation. So we had some really good stuff. But nobody could figure out where we should focus. And that's a problem sometimes with too much technology. And we were looking for a new CEO. And my friend John Whitman said, "I've got somebody you should talk to, this guy, Maurice Frey." Who's Maurice Frey? He said he sold his company 3 years ago to GE. And he's just come off a contract, and he knows about robotics, and we should talk. So I was still at Jeffries at the time, and I met Maurice, and it was going to be an hour meeting. And we just clicked. We talked for, 2 or 3 hours about where we could go with it. And he said, "Listen, let me come in. Give me a contract for 6 months. Let me look at this and see where I think we should go." And that's what he did. And after 6 months working with Roni and the team, he said we should focus on something called a partial knee, the Rapisi knee. And there's Dr. Rapisi was a dentist, and he was doing a partial knee. And so I learned about that and said that this is, so instead of, because it was ideal for a robotic arm. Dr. Rapisi had been a dentist, and he was good at cutting with a burr as opposed to straight saws. Orthopedics is all about jigs and saws and straight cuts until we came across this arm. So anyway, that's how we met. Maurice and I talked every day. I talked to Maurice a couple hours ago. I still talk to Maurice every single day. That's how I got started with Maurice. And as we then built, so then we decided, okay, with the Zcat, we had run out of the ability to raise money because we had, again, multiple layers. What's happened with Potrero? We had multiple layers of preferreds, and you couldn't attract new people because it was just too complicated a cap structure. So I said, okay, let's drop down a subsidiary and finance it. Let's raise $4 million. And that's what we did. And I went to New York City. I went up and I got one of my buddies at the time, a guy named David Tepper, put in $1 million. Another friend of mine, David Matlin, put in $1 million. I put in some money. We raised the $4 million. And that was the start of Mako Surgical.
And why the name Mako?
The Mako, because we had for Zcat to show, we had a butterfly as the symbol to show that a butterfly was so gentle it could go down and you could do the robot but Zcat turned out to be not so successful. And then we said, okay, we don't want to be a butterfly. What's the baddest fish in the ocean? Who takes no shit from anybody?
Mako, yeah.
We're going to be the shit. So we became Mako, and that's a true story.
I wonder if there's some things that science can't explain, and I feel making sure your company has a really fierce and awesome sounding name I think it's kind of part and parcel of it.
But look at it, it's stuck because it's still Stryker. They still talk about Mako.
It's still called Mako, yeah, the Mako robot. Actually, I've had surgeons on my show who are like, I'm a big Mako robot user, and I really love that, seeing success stories like that. By the way, sometimes I look back, I'm like, man, I should not have been in medical school. I should have been like investing in medtech companies. So when I got out of medical school and I went to go work in Missouri Robotics, I was so new, like I didn't even know how to buy a stock. And then by the time I found out about stocks, I was following Mako, and I'm like, oh great. And you guys were trading, I think, at 10 or 11 bucks a share. And then one day I see it jump up to $29. I'm like, wait, what happened? And they're like, oh, got acquired. I'm like, damn it. I remember that week I was like, oh, let me, like, as soon as I get paid this Friday, let me move some of that money into this Mako stock. I think it'll do well. Yeah, it's okay. But, during that time, by the way, for those who might have recognized the name, so everyone knows you and Maurice Frey, but Roni, for those who are like, I've heard that name, Roni went on to be the founder of Magic Leap, correct?
100%. And I was investor number 4 in Magic Leap. And I have the stock certificates to show it. I helped him. And I mentioned Allen Company before. And I got a friend of mine, Nancy Parrotsman, is one of the partners there, introduced her to Roni. And she was the one that helped Roni raise whatever it is, $3-4 billion for the company. And it's still the better augmented reality glasses. You see what's out now with Apple. The whole issue that Roni had talked about early on was, look at glasses. It's supported by our ears and the bridge of our nose. And even the US military, the Air Force, knows that you can only put so much weight on here. And that's why they had distributed it. And the Magic Leap glasses are pretty cool. Not like this whole ski mask kind of thing that's out there. Anyway, it may not be, it didn't go well for poor Roni at the end. And it was a tough one. One of the problems early on was it's so expensive and there are no gamers. Why buy these things if you can't do anything with them? And that's still a huge drawback. But anyway, Roni's a brilliant guy. You should talk to Roni because he's all about in the entertainment industry and movies as well. And by the way, they wasted money too, but they had a little division that made movies that could only be seen on the augmented glasses, and putting the worlds together of a flat with a hologramish a person. It was pretty cool.
I remember, yeah, because I remember when augmented reality was just barely coming out and when not a lot of people understood it. And Magic Leap, not it did, it popularized it. Because I remember like the Magic Leap glasses, they showed like a gymnasium and like a whale jumping out of the middle of the basketball floor, like a huge whale.
Yeah.
And so that was my first experience with the augmented reality and everything. So Magic Leap, I think, really set the standard for that. And again, when you're in tech, it's just so tough, right? I think it's just so tough because you're dealing with all kinds of adoption behaviors from the market. Plus, behavior change is not easy. This just as well as anybody else said, like when you bring like a new medical technology to market, even if it's like better than the standard, it's very clear and everything, getting people to change is a lot harder than people realize.
We can talk about Potrero, Acuren as a current example of that, but you're 100% right. Go back to Mako now, proud of it because now there are 1 million people walking around on the knees. And I started that company. And obviously there are lots of Roni and Dr. Roche. Dr. Marty Roche was our first surgeon. It's not like I did it all by myself, but I was part of that team. There are 1 million people walking on run on our knees. And Dr. Marty Roche here in South Florida at Holy Cross was our first doctor. Took us another year to sell our second robot because doctors didn't need a robot to do surgery. They didn't want this tool. Or we can do this ourselves. We're brilliant. And now I don't know how many users they have.
A lot. Yeah. They have a lot. It's implemented in residency programs. I got to ask you a personal question because this is a question. It's not the question. The answer you'll give is something that is so rare, and that's why I got to ask it. But you can just be like, don't want to talk about it. You're at Jefferies. You raise this fund, right? You have a couple of successes with iRobot and stuff. You move into Mako, right? Would you say that in your career, that was your first? I'd say Canon was a huge break. That was a huge success. But at least in MedTech, the Mako acquisition was the first big success. Am I correct so far? 100%. Okay. So Mako happens. It exits for, what was it, 1.6 billion, correct? Yeah. Okay. What does Chris Dewey do that year? Because a lot of people could have just taken their earnings and the return on that and just been like, I just made generational wealth. I'm just going to take it easy. Like you went harder, right? So when an event like that happens, especially for an investor early in their career, what did you do that year? How did it change the way you thought about the market and investing in money? Like something had to have changed that year. Can you think back and what was that like for you?
First of all, let's stay in Mako for a second before that happened. One of the things that Maurice and I wanted when we were going to take it, raising money, we wanted to go public because that's either get bought or go public. And nobody was going to buy us in those early days. So we're going to have to build sales. And that's what all these companies want now. They want sales. They want an add to their balance sheet. They don't want a negative trade. So anyway, how are we going to make Mako become a real company and have the street understand our story? Oh, put Fred Mahl on our board because let's tell the street that we are the Intuitive Surgical for orthopedics. They can understand that. And if Fred Mahl's on our board and he's out there saying that this is the next robotics company, analysts will follow us. So that was our coup, if you will, when our spider web to get Fred to come on the board. And then over the course of the next couple of years while we were public, but before we were being bought, through board meetings and just hanging out and doing stuff, I got to know Fred, and conversation led to, what else are you looking at? What else is interesting? Because mind you, my background from the movie business days was raising money. My career on Wall Street was raising money. I have no problem asking people to invest in something. And so in these conversations, he said, I'm doing something interesting. What's that? Auris. What's Auris? Right? So I said, that sounds cool. How much money do you need? 5 million. Okay, so I went back to the gang that I mentioned before, or some of them, and we put up money. I went on the board of Auris and raised Fred the first 5 million for Auris. And then what else is out there? Oh, there's a company called Procept. What's Procept do?
Procept's crushing it right now, by the way.
Yeah, it wasn't crushing when I raised them their first 5 million.
Yeah.
It was a prototype of what's it doing. It's using a water jet. If you can use a water jet to cut steel, you should be able to use a water jet to cut flesh inside a prostate, so BPH. And how's that work? So I went to see it in California. So I raised them their first 5 million. And then, oh, by the way, what else is out there? We got a company called Shockwave. what Shockwave do. It's got a way to use lithotripsy to break calcium in veins. And so I raised them $5 million and went on the board. And so I've got to be honest with you. My friend John Whitman said, Chris, I love investing with you. You're the luckiest guy I've ever seen.
I was seriously like, just these names that you're rolling off. I'm like, that's a hell of a portfolio to have.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. But it wasn't it was because of me being aware enough to sitting next to Fred Mahl and listening to these ideas, and then going and meeting Todd Britton at Stanford, who showed with an eggshell how he could break the eggshell, but not he could break the eggshell, but not the membrane inside. But I hear stories, but I listen, and that's how it grew. So now answering the question of, by the time we sold Mako, I'm already involved in these other companies, and I don't want to sound. I had a pretty good career. Bought the first house that I had because of the Canon. Canon stock, by the way, went from 50 cents to $50, and I sold stuff along the way and got a boat. And so I've had so I didn't change. It just made me. But I saw after Mako, I saw that there was an opportunity to do something else, which was with my partner, Mark Olwasser, to finance these companies. And coming from Wall Street, there's money on the street. There's to pick up, because if a company's successful, like a Mako, look how many rounds we went through. They need money because they're being successful. They don't need money because they're failing. Obviously some do, but if they're successful, they need rounds of financing. Same thing with Procep, same thing with Shockwave, same thing with Oris. And so what happened is I bought a small brokerage firm with my partner, Mark Goldwasser, to leverage the contacts that I had so we can make fees. So we charge 10% cash and oftentimes 10% warrants. And we have a sales guys that now raise money for these companies. So what did I change? I don't know. It just made me more involved, honestly. It wasn't that I went the other way, that I'm going to the beach now. And I'm getting on here. I got a little bit of gray. And I cherish and love talking to guys like you. Everybody's younger, but talking to smart young guys. And it just, I don't know. I'd say it's like a drug. That would be a bad thing to say, but it's it's invigorating, honestly.
No, I hear you. I'm only 37. So like when I talk to somebody younger than me, that they're usually just in their 20s, but I get the same kind of feeling. And I think part of it is I see a little bit of myself in like certain people that I mentor who are younger than me, but also it's just exciting. It keeps me energized as well. I have something, you tell me if you agree with this or not. I have this belief. So I have not yet made the amount of money that I want, millions and millions of dollars. So I haven't experienced this myself. Oh, do you need to get that?
No, I got it. No, it's an alarm.
Oh, perfect. So I haven't experienced this myself. I feel that money is a multiplier in the sense that it multiplies whoever you are. So if you're an asshole as a person, more money will just amplify that. It's an amplifier, right? For you, you're a lucky guy. And I think that part of that luck is also because you're just genuinely curious. And so as you've had these successes and these large returns, it's only amplified that luck and that curiosity. And so it makes sense that the thing has led to another. And then the next thing, like you've invested in Procep, Shockwave. You've mentioned some of the darlings of our industry, right? Do you feel like that's happened to you, that as you've had the success, that the success and of course the returns that come along with this amplified your strongest attributes?
The way you're posing it, I would say yeah. And the other thing about life is you give back too. It's a sense of generosity of spirit too. So it's not like I'm giving back, but I think I feel super proud about the most recent company. And we talk about where that goes. I don't know. I'm like a moth to the flame of ideas around our industry.
How do you find a good idea? Let me ask you that, because again, especially at this point in your career, and even years ago when Mako sold, you probably got approached by multiple companies, like many of them. And I'm sure like some of them didn't turn out the way you wanted, but like through your intuition or heuristics, if you want to call it, what do you look for in a good idea?
First of all, so I'll tell you that in a moment. But here's the thing. Because of Mako, it all goes back really to Mako and the group that we had around Mako. So there's some super bright guys. that were there. So the ideas really have come from this core group of guys that we all started around Mako. I'll give you an example. Marty Roche, who was our first surgeon, and he's still with Stryker, and he trains all over the world. And now he runs our Orthopedic Hospital for Special Surgery, the number one orthopedics hospital here in South Florida. So we're in the Mako days. This is before, I even think it was before we were public. We may have been public at the side. Reese calls me up and says, Chris, you got to come down to Florida and meet with Martin. Why? He said, because Martin has an interesting idea and I think we should back his company. So I go down, I sit down in Maurice's office, and Marty comes in and he starts talking about this sensor technology from Israel. And what's the idea? The idea is, why shouldn't an implant be a smart implant? Why shouldn't it tell me what's going on with it? Whether there's infection, whether the force pressures, why should an implant? So just sounded, why shouldn't we use sensors, using sensors in all other places? Why shouldn't we have them in orthopedics? Started a company called OrthoSensor. And OrthoSensor, we also sold to Stryker. So there's one of the guys. And Martin is a wealth of friggin' ideas on other, and so we backed some of his other ventures, and some of his other ventures a little bit too crazy. And then there's JJ Desai that you've met. JJ Desai brought us the idea. So I don't know if you followed Trisalis. Remember I'm not sure if you're sure that we did a SPAC. So I did a SPAC with Fred and Maurice and others.
Yes, I think I know which one this is.
Our SPAC was like your name, Medtech Acquisition Corp. Medtech Acquisition Corp. We raised $250 million. We were originally going to do a deal with a company called Memic, which was an Israeli robot.
That's right. Yes.
And then we dropped that. And JJ found this company called Trisalis, which is a catheter and basically a pump to be able to deliver better chemo to liver and also now the pancreas. And we also have a drug. And I think that the JP Morgan, our stock is amazingly trading at something like, not amazingly, I shouldn't say that, but our stock is trading like around $920, $950. And some of them, I think we are the number one of the Medtech, of the SPACs, the Medtech acquisition.
Yeah, because most of them did not do well, but Trisalis is one of the SPACs that actually did do well. You're right.
So I was the CEO of that SPAC, Medtech Acquisition Corp. But anyway, you were talking about where ideas come from. So that came from JJ. JJ has other ideas that we've invested with him in. And then Maurice. So it's really around, I don't really do something unless it's, and Fred gave us, I was just on the phone with Fred this afternoon on a company called Brias, which is a nitinol braces company that Fred and I invested in about 4 years ago, and wants to see if we'll help him raise money on. Then there's another company called Fresh Clean. It's a water. I'm not particularly happy about this company, but anyway, it's using a water floss. So not all of our companies have done well. One of them, you haven't asked about our failures. One was called hair restoration.
Yeah, did we talk about that one?
No.
Did you know that I worked there?
No.
Yeah, at Restoration Robotics. I was there for a year. Yeah. It's a great, you know what? Sorry, I'm at a point in my career I can just say whatever I want. Great technology. Yeah, great. Yeah, seriously, it feels good, right? Great technology. It's probably one of the most impressive robotic technologies that I've seen with the computer vision and everything. Just never could have the right management team around it to be successful.
And that's what, as I said earlier, what Harold Witt said all those years ago to me, 40 years ago or plus years ago, more probably. I invest in people, and that's it. They do make a difference in running these companies. So
it's really true.
I just don't listen to ideas that come in over the transom. I rarely ever. It's got to be something that comes from something within our group. Or if someone gives me something, I show it to Marty, I show it to Maurice, I show it to JJ, or show it to Fred. So
you have a mind, like a neural network that you essentially crowdsource to test, because each one of you have your own biases. And so if an idea passes through the filter of your bias, Maurice's, Fred, so on and so forth, then it's been vetted in a way. So it's really interesting, because most of the time, again, I'm not like a seasoned investor, but at least from the VC communities I follow, a lot of people in VC are pretty arrogant, and I think that they put too much weight on their own intelligence. And a lot of times I'll give you a great example. I don't know who it was, and I'm probably oversimplifying and being hyperbolic about this story, but there was this guy who was part of the Masa-san's Vision Fund, and they invested I think in FTX, okay, which is a huge, massive failure, fraud, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the things he said is, I just didn't really understand it, but then when Sam Bankman-Fried called me this one day and told me who else was investing, I went to Masa and said, we got to do this. And I was like, that's what happened. You're a seasoned investor, and then some CEOs, oh, look who's investing, and you did it out of FOMO. So I don't know. I feel like VC and investors expose the flaws and cognitive biases that humans actually have. And so it seems like you protect yourself from that by passing it through this filter of a tight-knit group where you guys have all invested in different things, but it's the things you understand the most, but everybody has their own bias. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. You're 100% correct. And the other thing that's different is that we're all investing our own money. So all of these deals, we're putting our own money. So
you guys you don't have LPs. This is your own money. That's important for the audience to hear, by the way.
It starts with our own money. So I'm a hybrid here because I have the brokerage firm, but it all starts with the deals that we give to our brokerage firm to raise money on are deals that we are investors in. So we're asking you to put money next to our money. It's different than these VC funds. And the other thing about the VC funds here is they have these areas that they focus on. And it's slightly different than something that they think they don't. But we're diverse. We have orthopedic surgeons and heart surgeons. And all of us we're coming out trying to make money, our own money here. We're not investing a fund's money. And that's the other thing. I had a chance in life that first fund, but we dissolved that, but use our own money. I think that's a key ingredient here. You don't want to waste it. It's too hard to come by.
Yeah, no, I completely. Do you mind, first of all, just for the audience, because I know we do have a lot of young investors and VCs listen to it, but a lot of medtech professionals listen. One is, can you explain to the audience, one, what is a brokerage firm? And two, what was your thought of, why did you buy a brokerage firm? Do you mind expanding that? Because I think that's fascinating. I think it's a really brilliant thing to do. But if you can explain, that'd be great to hear.
Okay, so let me take you back a little bit to.
I really should be there. I should be there in person smoking. This is like a cigar kind of conversation. Next time we're doing this in person. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Absolutely. But take you back 50 years. What was a brokerage firm? Brokerage firm was a group of individuals that sold stocks. And America was growing. And you had a company that you needed capital. You would take it public. And taking it public meant that you were selling shares to a large group of people. And the shares were then traded on a daily basis. There was liquidity. And they would sell ideas. So whatever and plants were being built across America at the time. So it wasn't just Medtech. It was I'm talking about the broad, what was financing America, which is, I'm a little bit concerned about this, honestly, because what happened over time is that, yes, they were bad actors. And there was a movie, Wolf of Wall Street. I don't know if you ever saw that. It's a pretty cool movie.
Absolutely.
With Leonardo DiCaprio. But that's a small fraction of what Wall Street was. Unfortunately, it gets an outsized view. You don't get to see the guy that goes home every day and has made money and has done a good job for his clients. So that's a bias against what Wall Street. But Wall Street basically was to take good ideas and raise capital for growing companies. And it's changed over the past 50 years, 20 years, where the brokerage firms like the Merrill Lynches of the world, they don't want their brokers selling an idea. They want them to gather assets so that Merrill Lynch runs the assets and that broker earns a half of a percentage point a year. The firm maybe earns 1% on assets. So they want to build assets under management. It's a great business and nothing against it. But now it's all institutional. So the idea that there are salesmen that sold ideas, there are very few of these firms that are out there. And these are called brokerage firms. So my partner and I, in our world, you want to have your assets to be safe so that the gold standard is fidelity. So you want to do something called clear through fidelity. In other words, you want to get the brokerage statements from fidelity. You want to make sure that some guy like a Bankman-Fried is saying that he's using your money for one thing and absolutely using it to buy apartments for his parents or whatever else he was doing. So you want to be at a fidelity. So our brokerage from Ceros clears through fidelity. So there's no issue, no question about whether your assets. And so then we have a group of individuals that still like telling stories, that want to hear something. And then there's still a world out there of investors that want to invest in something that they just don't want to invest in mutual funds. People like to brag on, oh, I just invested in this FTX and this Bankman Fried, blah, blah, blah. People like to yap at the dinner table of how brilliant they are. But in our area, there's a group of people that actually like to invest money. And then each one of these companies, we're doing something really good for society. We're doing something really good for an individual. And when you talked about what do I like in ideas, it's always, what are we solving for here? What are we doing better? So with Procept, you're being able to wash out. Instead of using an electric loop to carve out very bloody, painful procedure, you're able to do it with water and wash it out. You're kidding me? You can do that? So that was the idea. Mako, being able to do a partial knee as opposed to a total knee. You're solving problems. And so there's a group of individuals out there that like to hear to invest. So that's what a brokerage firm does. It's a group of individuals that tells a story, and they get paid. We get paid 10% of the cash we raise for companies. Now that may sound like a lot, but there are different skill sets. Not every single CEO is good at raising money and running the company and being the inventor or the doctor that solved the idea. There are different roles for different people, and there's still a role for a brokerage firm. And that's what our little firm, we've raised, I don't know, $250 million in say 20 deals or something like that at this point. And it just keeps my hand in the game. It's fun.
I love it. Yeah. And for those who are interested, I found the website. It's Ceros, spelled CEROS, ceroscapitalmarkets.com. And again, just looking at the banner of the logos that you guys have, of course, Dermasensor is one, Pristine Surgical, another great technology, Insightech technology, a lot of really good stuff there. Right now, when you look at like the current medtech market, what's interesting right now is if you look at the most powerful companies on planet Earth, Google, Microsoft, Apple, they all have a fiduciary responsibility to continue to grow. And so Apple isn't going to wake up tomorrow and Tim Cook isn't going to announce, hey, you know what, guys, to continue growing our share for our shareholders, we're going to go into furniture. And they're not going to do that. What's left is healthcare, because we spend like 22% of our GDP on it. And maybe 8 years ago, a lot of these companies tried to move into healthcare. It was a big royal failure. Remember, who was it? JP Morgan, Berkshire Hathaway, and was it Amazon, I think? They tried to form some kind of healthcare venture and it lasted 2 years. But now they're making their move again. Amazon acquired One Medical. Microsoft's doing more stuff in healthcare. So I think it's an exciting time in the healthcare space because you have a lot of new players coming in. There's so many different things that are out there. What are some new markets that kind of caught your eye that you're getting more interested in? Or are you still just focused mainly on certain areas of device?
I'm still on device, because the closest one would be Dermasensor. So Dermasensor is something that one of these new companies might be interested in acquiring and growing, because it's such a broad thing to be able to screen for melanoma with a handheld device, the first FDA approved device to do that. Might be something I don't know exactly how we're going to partner with one of these big guys, but I'll make
a prediction. How about that? This is a wild prediction, but if it's right, we're clipping this out and I'm gonna blast it everywhere. Here's my prediction: if Dermasensor were to get acquired by one of the big players, I think they would get acquired by Amazon, who owns One Medical, because One Medical essentially is a network of primary care facilities, and Dermasensor just is such a smart play in terms of taking the specialist of a dermatologist and putting it at scale through primary care, because even there's not enough dermatologists to see enough people to diagnose these things earlier. And I told Cody the other day, and again, these are my words, not Dermasensor, because I know they're sensitive about the FDA stuff, but I think Dermasensor is going to save millions of lives because there's so many people who are going to get screened by that technology, and they're going to catch things way earlier before it becomes malignant.
100%. That's exactly right. And that's when Maurice and I had the idea all that 13 years ago, where did that idea come? He said there's these astrophysicists in Boston. If you look at a stream of light, if you can look at a stream of light from a distant star and you can tell the makeup of what the star is made of. Can you shine a light? Can you shine a light on a lesion, and does it have a signature? That was the basic idea 13 years ago with BGO. And yes, the answer is it does. It took 13 years to get through the FDA. So I hope somebody's listening from Google that they say they need to get involved here and partner with us. Don't buy us yet. Let's get some big revenues, and so you have to pay a big number for it. Don't buy us too early.
Let's talk. Yeah, and maybe like good kind of pivot is like formerly Potrero, now Acuren Medical. What about that kind of caught your attention, and what do you like about that company?
What I liked about it originally, and if you want to talk a little bit deeper, give you a case story of what happened here in the past year with Potrero, what caught my eye on that is that a Foley catheter invented by Dr. Foley in roughly 1929, 1930, there's been no innovation on that in the past 90 years. It's still done the same way. And by the way, measuring urine output is something that every nurse has to do. And you've ever been in a hospital, you see the bag on the edge of the bed. And so the original one is that somebody has finally digitized it and made it easier and more accurate, was what originally caught my eye. And then about a year ago, Fred called and said they were having a problem raising money, which tells me the story. And I had invested with Fred 5 years ago and forgotten about where the company was going. But what had happened with the company over the past 4 or 5 years is that they were able to raise $100 million in capital from some sophisticated venture capital guys, a number of them Chinese funds and others. Plus, they had Baxter invest $15 million of strategic at $180 million post money, so that they'd raised 100 Baxter.
And this is all public now, I think. We're okay talking about this?
100%.
Okay, good. Yeah. There's my due diligence for the show. Keep going.
What happened was that's what caught my eye. And so for our brokerage firm, the idea is to be able to show that there was smart VCs in the deal, and that Baxter, why would they invest? Because they are potentially an acquirer. Okay. So what happens is we go out and I say, okay, we can raise you $12 million, but I need insiders to invest, and will Baxter do their pro rata? And so what happened is we go out and we raise them $8 million, and no current investors would invest, and Baxter wouldn't invest. And why? And there's lots of reasons on each one of them, but they had this complicated capital structure so that new investors, that company had to be worth $100 million before new investors were able to get their money, so that before you start to participate. So what happened is that last fall finally said, listen, we can't help you any longer. If you don't get Baxter to participate, and you can't get your current investors, we can't raise you any more money. And what happened is, by the end of October, they said we're going to liquidate. We're going to go out of business. And on a Thursday, I said, this is just unacceptable. This company there's so much going on with this company. At that point, they had 50,000 users, 55 plus hospitals. Cedars-Sinai in LA has 172 monitors. They reorder. At that point, there was a reorder rate. There was like a $2 million of revenue if you did nothing with the company. Bottom line is that I said, you cannot liquidate this company. So I gave them a term sheet where I was investing a substantial amount of money myself. And I said that I would raise them $10 million and not to liquidate this company, not to put it in, and we would put it in a chapter reorganization. And that's what we did, Omar. We filed, they kicked and screamed, but this was the right out for the company, right outcome for
and
the
to keep it alive too.
Keep it alive, absolutely, because you have these customers. And anyway, so the bottom line is where we emerged from bankruptcy 2 weeks ago and renaming it, putting the name Potrero to sleep, and it's Acuren Medical Corp. And we've got, of the $100 million investors, we had $13 million of them to invest in the new company. So now the capital structure, what you're doing, we're wiping out the past. The past is gone. That's why we can talk about it, because everything I'm telling you is in the court records in Delaware. And what I'm telling you is absolutely a fact. So now we have a brand new company capitalized with a new sales force. And by the way, we figured out how to sell this now after all this time. And it's a really good and neat company. I feel pretty proud. It's not the success yet, but I think it's going to be as successful in its own way as Mako, because this is something, accurate urine output is something that doctors talk about, but they heretofore they haven't gotten and on a regular basis. So now it ties into the medical record system in the hospital, the EMR of a hospital. Nurses don't have to touch it every hour. They can go and look at either on their iPhone or their iPad or their nursing station. Doctors can monitor if they want to at home. And oh, by the way, a couple of things fall out from this. If you get accurate, and it's not just the bladder, it's Acuren kidney. The kidney is a window. It's like another vital sign is what urine output is. And oh, by the way, we cut down by CAUTI, which is catheter-caused urinary tract infection, by having this technology that you probably know about, which is the active drain clearance. So they don't have to milk the Foley. There's no backflow of urine into the bladder. So we've done studies, 500 patient study with the Burnett study, that we've reduced CAUTI in one burn center by 90%, and that saves hospitals huge amount of money. And then, oh, by the way, if you have accurate urine, you have urine output accuracy, you can predict 36 hours in advance of acute kidney injury. And it's just a really good, we're going to help a lot of patients.
Yeah. And what I like the model so like on one side, like you have, at least in the medtech world, maybe it's my bias. I love hardware, which is traditional med device, but that has some kind of enhancement through software and data. So derma sensor, skills of a specialist put into a piece of hardware, and it's very simple and straightforward for a primary care to use it. So you do dermatology at scale. With Acuren, what they've done is they've essentially automated a vital sign and gotten continuous data. So like for me, from medical school, I have my medical school books back here. A lot of what you know about urine output has essentially been developed just from manual measurements. So you have to think about it is like when you put continuous data flow behind anything, you're going to get different insights, and that changes the standard. So I don't know what else in medicine that could be done to, but there's plenty of things in medicine that have not been automated yet. And the moment you automate it and put some data capture behind it, you're going to unlock like a new standard of care. And I'm excited to see how Acuren provides the business and innovation model for other device companies to replicate that in their own way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And you're right. Why look at the data? Why have the data if you're not looking at it constantly? So you're building this huge database, as you said, of urine output and what other things are going to be able to be extracted from that. But we're building so every single one of our monitors, we've got 1,200 monitors in the market right now. If they're all, not all of them are connected, but if they are connected to medical records, you can pull this data. So I'm not telling you we're a data company, but we're capturing it.
What do you, as an investor, where do you feel like there's some other areas of device that I guess innovation is needed? That's a really broad question, but I'll give you one example just to set the tone. One example is, at least in the robotics world, we all are familiar with this razor blade model, right? You sell the capital and then you sell the disposable afterwards. And unfortunately, like that model is becoming antiquated because hospitals aren't dumb, and a lot of them are part of larger systems. They have buying committees and everything, and they're just not signing up for that anymore. So I'm waiting to see who's going to come up with new business model innovation in the device industry. So that's one area. But for you, when you look at the devices as a whole, like where are some areas you feel that need some disruption and change, or maybe even an evolution?
Well, I don't know. It's
a really broad question. I know. I had to throw it out there.
I'll tell you where still there's innovation. So in robotics still, I think that something like 5% of surgeries are done
robotically. Yeah, you're right.
It's like tiny compared to the market. So where's some innovation going there? So one of the areas is everything in the past has been going back to intuitive. It's all straight sticks, right? You're going through the abdomen and you're moving these around so that you can go down. So everything is straight sticks. You're putting the tools on the end of the straight sticks, right? That's still intuitive. So you have a big machine. So there's this Israeli company that Fred's on the board of, and I'm an investor in early on, is Momentous. That's, I think, the Memic Momentous Israeli company. And Devere Cohen is the innovator here. And think of the tools as my fingernails. So you can retroflex. So you can go in, and it started doing this through transvaginal surgery for hysterectomies. So you go right now, doctors are doing it, their view is down and they open the belly and it's invasive. Think about going through the vaginal canal and you go through the vaginal canal and then retroflex. So the surgeon is looking at the tools as if he were doing it naturally, but he's retroflexing with these arms. So that company, it got a little bit ahead of itself because it didn't have the controllers that the surgeon. So there's a brilliant surgeon named Dr. Stape down here in South Florida. I think he's done like 15,000 procedures on the Intuitive, on the Da Vinci, and he can manipulate any robot. So he was able to do these surgeries brilliantly using the controllers that Mimic had come up with. But other surgeons, to make it, they want a Intuitive-like controllers. So that's why they got a little bit ahead of themselves. But oh, by the way, they go back to the FDA and they say, okay, no canal, single port. We can go through the abdomen, single port, small footprint. So they have now gotten FDA, not approval, but approval to do a 510K trial through the single port. That'll be disruptive because that'll be the first robot where there's a smaller footprint. You don't have to dedicate an OR like you have to do. It can go into surgery centers. That will be disruptive. And Vicarious has a robot. They were one of our competitors. They did a SPAC. I think their stock is trading at
that SPAC didn't do so well, I think.
45 cents or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a knock. I'm a little competitive, but I think that Mimic. So
okay, you're on the right show to do that. This is a pretty straight, like we're pretty straight edge on this show. That's why people listen to it. So you can say whatever you want on this show.
So there's one. Here's one that Fred's got now. So think about this as a robot. I don't remember the name. It comes from Scandinavia, but it's a blood draw. Where think about this as a robot to put and I haven't seen it, but Fred's very high on this, be able to put your arm in a case, if you will, and a robot cleans it.
And does the blood draw? That's pretty big, actually.
Yeah, very. And then it puts a Band-Aid on it. And he said he's done it 3 times. And he said there's no way of getting over the pinprick. So they're good phlebotomists and they're bad ones. It's not that painful. Everybody does it. Put the thing on but to have a robot do it, I don't know, that's pretty innovative. You're asking what other ideas out there. Those are just a couple right now that come to mind.
What do you do outside of investing? Like, how do you stay? I feel like one of the things I love about talking to investors, like being an investor, it's almost like you have to be very what's the right word? Very cultured and well-read and everything, because you have to have all these different viewpoints and biases in order to make good investments. So like outside of this, aside from film, do you like reading books? Do you listen to podcasts? Like where do you draw inspiration and ideas from yourself?
Super to read. I don't know what we got here on the floor right now. I got this the 3 books on the floor, but here's some Churchill. And I read the guy died about, I'm saying this crazy, but sometimes reading obits, and I read about this guy, a guy named Harry Lorraine and Memory. So
I got that. That's a great book. Yeah, that's a great book. I do. I have him like right back there, actually.
Interesting guy, right? Just crazy interesting guy. And so then, I don't know if a historian at Stanford, Victor Davis Hanson.
I heard about that one. I haven't read that one yet. Yeah.
Really interesting guy. He's not a wokester. Can I show you something else? So I
Absolutely.
rode my bike this morning for an hour. I play tennis. I play a little bit of golf. And let me show you what I'm doing right now.
Let's see it. See, the audience loves these kind of episodes. Like they feel like they're hanging out.
I'm building a ship model.
Oh, that's awesome.
And this is the hull of a boat called the Atlantic. And for 100 years, it was the fastest sailboat across the Atlantic. It's called the Atlantic. And I don't know, I like working with my hands and doing stuff.
I think, yeah, I don't know. The way that, like, so a lot of a good portion of my audience is like young sales reps. And so a lot of times they're looking for sort of a shortcut. They're like, what's the one sales book you recommend and everything? And for me, at least, I felt like what's made me a better business person is not sales and marketing book, but books on history, books on psychology, and then just really having an appetite of curiosity that's very broad, because you get exposure to different industries and you get ideas that aren't being done currently, like in medtech. That's like a lot of the commercial and sales stuff. I think of the same thing.
I totally agree. By the way, the best way, so I came from Wall Street and had a really funny, wasn't so funny for us at the time, but anyway, a sales manager. And I'll tell you his secret. You know the best way to say it, to pay a salesman? Cash every night going out the door. A commission salesman, cash every night going out the door.
And you there's something to be said about that.
He said, you know what? He said, I'd have to kick you guys out of here 11 o'clock at night to go home with your wives.
Yeah. You know who built a multi-billion-dollar empire that way? U.S. Surgical. When U.S. Surgical got started, Leon Hirsch hired people, and it was, I did an episode on this. They hired people, this is back in the 80s. You went through 4 weeks of training, and that was your interview. And it was like, you're going to go through 4 weeks of training, and if you don't pass this training, you're not hired. So that was it. And then once they got through, it was 100% full commission. The first decade of that. And that company built, like, they became huge.
The power, I tell you, a salesman, the power of commission is it's give me a piece of the deal and I'll bash down the walls. It's pretty funny anyway.
I wonder, like, when it comes to incentives, though, this is another area that, like, I feel like needs some innovation in our space. So compared to even 10 years ago, selling as an investor, you work with so many different companies. It's really hard to sell in healthcare these days. Like, it's way more complicated, way more difficult. And there's a part of me where I feel like, should we have a different structure for salespeople where maybe it's a little bit of a higher base salary and less commission, just because some of these deals just take a long time? I don't know. What's your take on that?
You're right, because that's what we've morphed into at Acuren, is just exactly that. A higher, just exactly where you're going. But you know what but I'm overlaying on top of that the good old fashioned sales competition. So if you can sell X number in the next 2 months, or whoever sells the most in the next 2 months got a $50,000 bonus. Don't underestimate the competitiveness of salesmen. But I think you're right. At least with us, you're doing exactly what we said, because the sales cycle is longer. But oh, by the way, on Acuren, I think we've cracked the code. I'm not sure that we cracked the code, but I think hopefully we've cracked the code by making the sale a simpler sale. And I don't want to bore people with Acuren too much, but because we can do so much with it, the inter-abdominal pressure that matters to trauma surgeons, and AKI, which is a huge cost to the healthcare system, is recognized by CMS because they're going to, this October 1st, they're going to start monitoring it for future dinging the healthcare system. For us, just keeping the simple story of accurate urine output that's people care about that.
I completely agree with you. If I can, and I just want to make sure, I want to be respectful. Are you good on your time so far?
Yeah, sure.
We know you got different other things to do.
Coming up here, so
what's up?
I said, you have a hard stop coming up. So
I don't have a hard stop. I actually pushed that meeting. I messaged them like, hey, this is not going to happen today. So, because I'm having too much fun with you. But so I'm on your time, sir. So like you just let me know. But it's funny because if you understand mathematics and physics, it really can be applied to anything. So if you think about selling, what you said is so wise, which is making it simple to sell. So it's one thing. Why is that important? If you think about the formula for penetration, it has to do with force and surface area. So here, for those who are not following, like, I have this beautiful Mont Blanc pen. That is the first thing I bought. The first year I was in business, I had to hit a goal. Once I hit it, I got this pen. So on the top side of the pen, which is more of the dull side, right? I don't know. It looks like it's maybe 2 or 3 centimeters. For me to try and push this through the wall, I have to put a lot of force behind it. A lot of force, and it's not going to do it. But if I flip the pen and I use the ballpoint side, where maybe it's like 1/4 of a centimeter, I can penetrate a wall with a lot less force. And I think it's the same thing with sales, which is if you have a lot of stuff to sell, it takes a lot more force to sell it and penetrate it through. Versus if you have one very specific thing and you solve that problem, that's enough to penetrate through. And I like this sort of land and expand thing. And again, with Acuren, just because I worked there and I know the product well, I think finding that one killer app to get into a hospital. And once you're in, you're able to expand. Same thing. Look, Intuitive with Da Vinci did the same thing with the radical prostatectomy, right? Yeah. Intuitive Da Vinci can do a lot of things, but they focused on the radical prostatectomy to penetrate the market. And once they penetrated, they were able to expand in different areas. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Go back to the Mako. We could have done so many different things with it, but
a lot of applications, but you focused on knees.
Yeah, but even a subset of knees, we focused on a partial knee, that was a market that people didn't even pay attention to. So we're not The Strikers of the world, nobody gave it, nobody cared. That's what we were doing. But there was the partial knee, and now we do the total knee and shoulders and hips. But anyway, it's figuring out how to sell is an art form. Not maybe an art form.
It is an art form. I think it's both an art and a science. Completely agree. Chris, quick question for you.
Yes, sir.
I want to ask you a few more questions. I want some more stories because this is just, I'm having a blast and this is gold. Do you need to take a bathroom break?
No, but I'm good. But by the way, how about another 15 minutes till 7? Does that sound cool to you?
Perfect. All right. I'm not going anywhere. I'm gonna ride it through.
I'm right here.
15 minutes.
Okay, but you want to take a break? No?
Yeah, actually, let me go. I'll be really quick.
No, I'm not doing anything.
We'll get you out in 15. By the way, just a quick side note. I always joke with Joe Urban, and I said, Joe, I was like, Acuren needs to make like a home consumer unit, because if they did, I would totally use that. I would never have to leave my desk.
But by the way, just think about that. Think about how many vets and how many people are at home in institutions and so forth.
Oh yeah, who have a catheter on. Absolutely.
And they get caughty. Those people are keeping catheters in for a long time with its active drain. That's a whole world, having a home unit that we can develop. We haven't done that yet. I'm super excited about where we're going. I think Joe's doing a good job. Sandy Thompson, who's had a commercial. I just did you know Todd Dunn by any chance when you were?
A little bit. I never met him, but I know a little bit.
So Todd, he just texted me. He said, thought you'd appreciate this if you haven't heard. Scott Becker of Becker's Healthcare emailed me about an interview and article on AKI.
Oh, nice.
We're gonna get the word out there.
Absolutely.
Can I just try something out on YouTube, by the way?
Is this off the record or on the record?
No, on the record. You can go.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. So let me 1, 2, 3. Okay, go.
Okay. I don't know. Does this sound too crazy to you? Think about this for a second. Now we're talking about Acuren. So we do two things with Acuren. We reduce caughty and we can predict AKI, acute kidney injury. So think about a heart patient. So a heart patient goes in.
On the cardiothoracic side? Oh, 100%.
He goes in and he has a problem with his heart. But as soon as he walks in the hospital, he can get two other diseases. One is he can get caughty, he can get a catheter infection.
And acute kidney injury.
And 30% of heart patients get a kidney injury. So just think about this for a second. Is there anything in life? Nobody would get on a swing if 30% of the time you're going to get a broken arm. It's like insane.
Yeah. And this is the thing. This is where I think Acuren is a good example, but there's so many things like this in healthcare where you have a pathology, but in reality, there's probably a lot more people who end up dying as a result of that pathology because they end up with one pathology, but then they die later of something else.
And because they went into the hospital. So I think that this isn't I'm not saying we should be a consumer. We should go to direct to consumers, to heart patients. But by the way, if I'm a heart patient, now that I know this, no way, I want an Acuren. I don't, Let
me bridge this for you with one example. And then just to wrap up, I have a fundraising question for you. But before I get to that, one of the areas I've been very interested in is the continuous glucose monitoring sector. Okay. The reason why is that something happened. I think coincidentally it was COVID. But in the last few years, consumers have become really interested in healthcare. So I'm wearing a Whoop device, right? So people have got interested in tracking their heart rate, their steps, their heart rate variability, all these different things. Now I'm a healthy guy. I'm not diabetic. I'm not pre-diabetic. I'm paying cash per month to have this continuous glucose monitor through a company called NutriSense. So there's this bridging gap of people getting more interested in their healthcare and the data and managing it, and let's say medicine. And I feel like because of that, it's starting first with like more like obvious things like, hey, let me monitor my heart rate. Let me monitor my respiratory rate. Now it's let me monitor my blood glucose rate. And I think as consumers get more interested in their healthcare, they're willing to pay more cash to get assets that'll start informing them. And I think that's a really exciting and new area for med device. I don't know what's going to become of it. Once consumers start changing their behavior around this, I think there's going to be a lot more consumer awareness. Look, there was a period where you go in and get let's say a knee or a shoulder replacement or something. People are actually going to the surgeon and asking which implant they're going to use. Because on shows, for example, like Joe Rogan's show, every other episode, he usually talks about like shoulder surgery or knee surgery or neck surgery because of the fighters that come on. So the public is getting interested in this kind of stuff.
I think now that we're talking, I think you're so right about this, because think about this for a quick second. So take you back. I think the biggest thing that's happened in my lifetime is diagnostics, because I'm a 2-time cancer survivor. I had at 45, I had colon cancer. Now, why am I? My father died of colon cancer at 66. So my mom, God bless her, she had been going to a colonoscopist, and he just said, because you should do it 20 years earlier. So I went for my first colonoscopy when I was 40 and come back 5 years later, but I was a wizard of Wall Street. Nothing was going to get me. So I went back in 6 years, and I had a polyp. And I'll remember the call because I was sitting at the desk when I got a call from the nurse saying, Dr. Shinya would like to see you. And I said, that's good. I'm free next week. And she said, no, we'd like to see you today. And this is 11 o'clock in the morning. I'm sitting on my desk on Wall Street. And so I went to Dr. Shinya, and he told me that I had a polyp, and his recommendation is that I had a rescission. So I did that. And then 5 years later, I had prostate cancer, and I had my prostate taken out by Dr. At Johns Hopkins, Dr. Patrick Walsh, who was the guy that discovered that the nerve bundle, that were the bad things, impotence and incontinence, if you didn't leave those nerve bundles and take the prostate out. So that was before the Da Vinci. So I've had cancer twice. So my only point is to screening. And I was just at the doctor the other day. So screening, you're wearing a couple of screening devices, even though it sounds simple like heart rate, right? But that's one. It was at my doctor the other day. Apparently we're talking to Marty Roche, a friend of ours is dying of pancreatic cancer. You're wonderful, one of our guys that worked back in our days at Mako. And Marty was talking about getting a full body screen for the pancreas. And my doctor said, no. He said, I don't think you need to do that because there's now a blood test. It's expensive right now, but it has all these markers, like for 32 different, you may have heard about it. So I think that you're exactly right. This area of diagnostics and tracking, and that's why DermaSensor. If you have something on your shoulder, I think you ought to spend $20 and screen it and be happy that you don't have it. Right?
Cody's going to get upset at us. I'm just going to say it. Okay, Cody, I'm just saying this is not something that DermaSensor endorses, nor have they talked about anything. But I think it makes a lot of sense to make a consumer version of a DermaSensor device and then put that at scale, because if you have a family history of that, people will buy that, and then insurance companies will pay for that.
When Marisa and I, it's taken 13 years to get to the FDA, so we don't want to upset them because we love them and they're a wonderful group.
Wonderful people. Yep. Like I said, these are my ideas. Chris did not say this, nor did DermaSensor, nor did they endorse it. I'm just a guy on the internet that has a podcast. All right.
But by the way, wouldn't it be great to have a $99 device or $100 device in your cabinet that your wife, so you're showering off, she says, hey, by the way, Omar, let me do this. And oh, good, this is good. But we couldn't get that. All we could get is the device that we have to have PC.
But it's a step in the right direction. The most important thing. So I know you got to go. I got one last question for you. So you are a wizard of Wall Street, but you're a wizard at raising money. What's one thing about raising money that people often get wrong that they should know? What's one piece of advice for those? Because there's a lot of young VCs and fund managers who are trying to raise a fund. What's the one thing about raising money that you feel like people should know?
To me, it all goes back to the idea. You have to have you have to show, in our industry, you have to have something that's making a difference in people's lives. It's shortening stay in the hospital. It's doing something that's better. All of these things that we've invested in, it all boils down to, are you solving a problem? And generally the problem, it comes to you through either a surgeon or an engineer or somebody that's trying to do something that's better. To me, that's, in our industry, it's the kernel of the idea. Does it make sense? And is it really going to make a difference to patients? I'm screening now. We're just talking about screening. I would be interested in hearing, it doesn't have to be a medical device, but are we screening for something that makes sense, that's going to change people's lives? I don't know if that's a good answer for you. But different industries, raising money in the movie business was a joke. It was the funnest thing ever because everybody is in their own, if they have some money, everybody wants to be in their business. It's not enough to be the biggest developer in the world. You want to be the biggest developer with a movie. You want to be a movie producer. So it's different selling techniques. Our industry, though, I think it's the idea has to make sense. I don't know. I hope that's a good answer for you.
I think it's a great answer. And look, you're definitely coming back on the show. I know my audience well, and the moment that we publish this, I'm going to get emails saying, "Hey, when are you going to have him back on?" So, Chris, I really appreciate you coming on the show. For those who are listening, Chris is on LinkedIn, so be sure to go and connect and follow him. I'm your host, Omar Khateeb. If you haven't subscribed already, subscribe to the show, give us 5 stars. And Chris, you got one more last
question. Omar,
last thing.
The reason I want to come back and talk to you is I don't do anything with my LinkedIn account. So I was reading, I want to watch your show about LinkedIn and marketing through there. And that's a whole nother conversation where I could learn from you.
I got you covered. Look, perfect plugin. Anybody who needs help with your LinkedIn, just go to upgrademylinkedin.com. It's a simple little mini course. I'll give that to you, Chris. You can watch it over a weekend, and I'll help you. I'll make you a star on LinkedIn. Don't worry.
Right, let's do it, buddy. Let's do it. I've so
Awesome.
enjoyed. Thank you so much, Omar.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, take care, and we'll see you all next time. Thanks for checking out this episode. If you want to do me a big favor and join so many other people who have helped grow this podcast, take a second and look below. If you're on Apple, give us 5 stars and write a short review. If you're on Spotify, just give us 5 stars. And if you're on YouTube, hit the like button. And most importantly, if you can, subscribe. We release so many different episodes that you may miss. Be sure to subscribe and turn your notifications on. You get extra points with me if you subscribe across all 3 channels. Thank you so much. And if you felt like this episode helped you, send this to somebody who would really enjoy and appreciate it. Share and spread the love. We'll see you all next time.